those of you who weren't there or haven't, read the description much, this year's, two-part panel on this topic kind of takes off from what one of the panelists on last year's, Tempest Bradford, had to say after that about the things in magazines and anthologies, which in some ways can be a similar kind of thing in terms of being a gathering of short stories in one place between two covers, virtual or not. She said that the magazines and anthologies that I love tend to have editors who have taken the time to examine themselves or their culture, to expend their knowledge of other people and ways of doing things, to open their minds. These magazines and anthologies contain far more stories I want to read by authors of many varied backgrounds. As I said, it's not fully about print versus online. It's about better magazines and books. And the first thing that I'll toss out to everybody here, I think, comes right out of that, which is that last year they divided this into two parts along the print and electronic axis. The first part was print magazines, and the second part was devoted to people who were doing and involved in electronic magazines. And I think it says something, I think she's right, and it says something a lot that this year that has not been the case. The panelists are mixed up. There seems to be a recognition kind of forming that that axis is not that important, not that meaningful, and may be fading kind of as we sit here and talk about it. But we have representatives from all sides, so if anyone wants to talk a little bit about that, or if you don't, you can tell me, I'll go to the next question. What's the question? Do you agree with that? Do you feel like that distinction is not so important? And if so, do you think that that's something that's increased over the last year since we met here last time?
Well, yeah, I think the distinction is fairly meaningless. I mean, ultimately, what people want is, they want good stories, like, as the quote. I mean, some people are still going to prefer to read on paper, and some people will have, more, they'll be more willing to try the, different sort of reading experience, which, ultimately is basically the same. It's just, pixels instead of print. But I mean, I think like when you have a magazine, like say what we're doing with Lightspeed, I mean, we kind of try to replicate as much as possible the print reading experience, because we have an ebook version, but then we also have just the web version, which is like the sort of the new paradigm of magazine publishing, just publishing on the web. But so if you're not really comfortable just sitting and reading in your browser, there's an ebook, you get a Kindle, you can get Lightspeed on your Kindle, and then it's not that different from reading FNSF or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I think as we've become more used to reading on these new devices instead of just always reading in books, I think it's becoming much less of a distinction between the two forms. And especially I think as the younger generation gets older and becomes more of the target demographic of publishing. It's just going to get more and more in that direction where it's like, the distinction is meaningless. And I mean, I don't think online is going to replace magazines or print in any sense, not for a long time. But I mean, magazines probably have the tougher road just because it's harder to keep the magazine going as opposed to book publishing, which is going to be, I think, not have that big an issue from online stuff. But
personally, for me, I think for the future of short fiction, accessibility, regardless of format, is important. If we want the field or new entrants to the field enjoying short fiction, that accessibility is paramount, and that people must be able to find it, regardless of whether or not it's print or online.
Last year I was on the on the print panel, and I felt like I was the only one on that panel that understood what publishing online was about, even though I don't do it, which was kind of a disturbing experience for me, actually, that I was there defending online magazines as a print editor. The reason I think that happened, it isn't about me, although what the heck, is that I was part of a revolution before. I was part of the desktop revolution in the 1980s that we thought was going to save the world. And there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of us that started our own magazines with the new technology that was available at the time. And I'm still stuck largely in that mode of hard copies, small press magazine, mainly because this isn't my job. I do this on the side, and I don't get a chance to learn new technologies. If I were 27 years old again, I would be doing online magazines because it's a new exciting thing to do and a new way to reach people, or more likely I'd be doing both, which I think is what more and more is going to happen. That people who are in the print business in magazines need to stop being afraid of online magazines because they're not really competitors. They're complementary, and really it feels right now like we're going through actually a kind of a boom in short fiction. It just feels that way. I've been in this business for a long time, and I actually believe that that's the case.
I'm going to be a bit of a malcontent, and I'm going to say, no, I think that difference is actually extremely meaningful, but I don't think it's meaningful in the sharks versus jets kind of way. You know, the argument is not meaningful, but the distinction is meaningful. And if people have come to this panel in previous years have heard me harp on about this stuff, and you will know about my never-ending quest for hyperfiction, for Ideomancer, because I'm firmly of the opinion that we haven't quite figured out how to use the internet as a publishing device just yet. We're not quite there. We keep using it as a digital page. It's not a digital page. There are things we can do with this medium that once we wrap our brains around them, it'll be, you know, it will be a fundamentally different form of storytelling, which is not to say it will be new, improved, and better, and all that other kind of storytelling can go hang. It's just to be different. And so I think that the difference in medium is, you know, it's sort of a root of a different kind of storytelling, and that's important.
Yeah, when you talked about that, I heard you talk about this last year, and probably several other times.
Yeah, I've been harping on it. No one sends it to me.
I really like this idea of the sort of the hyperlinked
Yeah.
text. In a way, it reminds me of Gibbon writing, having all kinds of old I'm a historian, all kinds of historical old works where you'd have one running narrative in the text and another narrative in the footnotes commenting on it or carrying on a different story, you know, spinning off the other. And that's what hyperlinks would be really useful for in a story. But you have to think story in a different way.
Yeah, you have to sort of reformat your notion of story, and people are starting to do it. You have stuff like 9 Inch Nails, the whole Year Zero alternate reality game, which was basically story as run through the internet, through phone lines, through flash drives left in club bathrooms. We got a submission recently that was a Choose Your Own Adventure novel, based on a short story. We published something called 21 Small Disasters, which was Meg McCarran and Tim Pratt and Greg Van Aken and a whole bunch of other people. And they had keywords, and it was little flash fictions based on keywords that would appear in the other ones, and you'd click it, and you were constructing your through line as you went. And these things are possible. So I think it'll be more that, you know, print. I definitely don't disagree that I don't think the death of print is anywhere near pending. But I think they might start splitting into different modes of story rather than just different kinds of delivery method of story.
Okay, I mean, that's a very interesting point. It's not something that came up at the first part, so I think it's something we should explore here definitely more, because that is, I mean, that is a question that I think everybody who's involved in electronic magazine publishing at this point needs to be thinking about, probably already is thinking about, and has an opinion on. And there's no question that by and large, the vast majority of electronic magazines still emulate, in a sense, like you were saying, the print kind of philosophy. Mm-hmm. You're presenting static stories. They may have a link or two in them or not, but the narrative structure is the same thing. The art form is still the same thing. It's the medium, it's the transmission method, it's the device you're reading on that's different, but not the art form. And whereas Leah's talking about the possibility of using the other things that this medium is able to do to explore and maybe develop new art